Let's just crack on. Hello and welcome to the NCG Golf Podcast. I am your regular host, Tom Irwin, and I'm joined by bespectacled Steve Carroll.
Gives me a distinguished look, Tom.
Does a little bit, doesn't it? Sort of like, I don't know, you look like kind of well-read and bookish, serious, like a man who's ready to have a serious debate about something.
Oh, this is the kind of man I've always aspired to be.
Method acting. Huh? Right, so we're going to try and start off this podcast like a normal podcast where I'm going to say, just excuse me a minute while I ask you to subscribe. So we have seen steady growth in our subscriber numbers over the last 12 or 24 months, but we never demand that people subscribe, and we are now demanding that you subscribe because we know you creatures of habit, and if you just manage to click that subscribe button, you'll get a little alert every time a new podcast comes out on Apple or on Android or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. That means we'll get more listeners. That means we'll be inspired to do more shows, get better guests, and the quality will go up, won't it, Steve?
My end of year bonus depends on it.
There we go.
Jobs for journalists.
Steve, hashtag jobs for journalists. And because you've hit that subscribe button, I'm now going to offer you some incredible value. Many of you will be participants in our Top 100 tour. Many more of you will have read and pored over the value lists that we've been publishing on social media and on our website, which on the one hand take you through the extortionate prices at Top 100 courses across GB&I, but on the other hand are giving you a bit of a peek behind the curtain about where value exists at some of those Top 100 courses. One of those places on our very own Top 100 tour where you can get some amazing deals for playing some of the best courses across the country. We can offer you a further discount by quoting the code podcast10 when you visit the website ncgtop100tour.com.
$3,500, I think you can save at the 72 top 100 courses that we are visiting this year, where there's a discount to be had.
Is that right?
Just under $3,500, I think, on the rack rate summer price. So there's some absolute proper savings to be had.
And then there's another 10% on that.
And another 10% on that.
That is quite a lot then, isn't it? It is quality as well, and you get free tailor-made stuff and all the rest of it. It's brilliant. Right, so today we're going to have a big deep dive into another survey we've been running.
We love a survey.
So we kind of like did a survey, and then this is kind of how we operate around here. We're like, oh, we've done one, let's do another one. So we now have done another survey, and this one is about golf club membership. So we kind of pontificate about whether the off-course boom that we're all seeing is translating into golf club memberships. We're kind of the view that maybe golf club memberships are going to come under pressure, but we have decided rather than kind of continue to pontificate and speculate about that, we're going to ask you about your membership habits, your intentions to renew, whether your fees have gone up, why it is you're a member of a golf club. We've got well over 1,000 responses over the last week to this survey. So we're going to have a bit of a deep dive into that. And happily for us, Scottish Golf have just produced some data from their own membership survey, which gives us a bit of balance against some of our own figures and helps to kind of, it's additive to that narrative. But before then, we are going to have a bit of a ruffle and a riffle around in Steve's virtual post bag, by which I mean the comments on our website, the comments on social media that have flourished since last week's podcast on etiquette.
The death of etiquette, or not, as the case may be.
Etiquette or the lack thereof.
Easy for you to say. I wrote a piece about this, which you can read on nationalclubgolfer.com, essentially expanding on the line that I thought, extrapolated, is that the right word? Probably not. In the podcast where I argue that etiquette is, if it's about control, if it's about just telling people what to do, then is that really good etiquette? Are there better ways of reinforcing that message? Can you just do it in a more polite way than shout at someone for having a cap in the clubhouse or march across a fairway to tell them to tuck their shirt in? Mm-hmm. So have a read of that. Feel free to agree/disagree with it. But we had a lot of response to our podcast and obviously to that piece. Keep giving us your comments, if you will, on our various social media channels and on our website. It's fantastic to hear what you think when we write some stuff, even if you don't always agree with me. Shall I read some of these out?
Yeah, please.
We've got a lot, so I'll try and be picky. Janet on our NCG golf.com page said, I don't think dress codes should be mixed with golf etiquette, which I think is what you were saying actually last week. Dress codes are up to the club and I'm all for a more relaxed attitude, but etiquette for me is about behaviour. And for that, there could be rules or at least guidance that could be applied nationally, even internationally. Repairing pitch marks and divots, shouting four, not walking on someone's putting line, not walking across another fairway, take your ball, regardless of whether there are players on their fairway, should be universal. Etiquette standards have slipped, and I think that's partly to do with the membership process, along with losing the interview process. We've also lost the playing someone in and buddy process with members would play with a new member and explicitly point out how to care for the course and other members. I argue with a lot of that, actually.
No, I think Janet makes a good point. Now, just before we get into that, you have sort of got the counter view from someone else, haven't you? So Janet is saying we must be careful not to conflate dress code standards with behaviour standards. But someone else says the opposite, where they think it kind of goes hand in hand. I've certainly read that.
Yes. Have I picked that out? There's a lot about hats.
Yeah.
Which we can get on to.
I want to get into hats separately, but I think that Janet's view is very aligned to mine in that there is no relation between what you're wearing and how you behave.
Yeah. So this is Jeff who said, I agree with your sentiment that etiquette is more about behaviour than appearance, but I still feel there needs to be a line in the sand on dress code, but much lower than it has been set up for way too long. Style and trends change over time, like the aforementioned hoodies. I basically wrote about the Tyrrell hat and hoodie in the piece. But personally, jeans would still be out for me on the course, but shouldn't be seen as an issue at all. I think post-COVID, there's been a shift in the demographic of golfers of why they join clubs. Speaking with friends at others in our area, it's not just my own, there are a significant number of new members who now just join to play and then leave straight afterwards, more akin to a municipal mentality. Clubs are struggling to get new members to engage with social events, join committees, and participate in teams representing the club. All this contributes to the etiquette of being a club golfer. Teams, definitely. Like, teams was a big thing when I first started. And teams are still a thing at some private members clubs that I've been at, but it is more difficult now to get people to do the old jacket and tie and the meal afterwards. People just want to play their golf, have a pint, I think,
so
and,
I think
and go home.
I think that's a slightly different point. So just to go back to Janet's point about this conflation between what you're wearing and how you behave. So I think that she's absolutely hit the nail on the head there. But it's not a universally popular view, because there are just as many people who say that what you wear in some way affects your behaviour.
Yeah, I saw that on Facebook a bit.
And they link the two things. Now, I can tell you that I have committed some heinous crimes, probably some actual crimes, whilst wearing a tuxedo and being as smartly dressed as it's possible for a man to be. So certainly in my case, the smart dress does not lead to smart behaviour. But I've also been incredibly polite whilst wearing a vest and some shorts. So I just don't think it's true that dress codes and good behaviour go hand in hand. So I think that is a good point. I think that is a hill we will die on. You mentioned hats.
Oh God, yeah, hats. So in my original draft of the piece that I wrote, I had a whole anecdote in there about hats, some of which I actually talked about on the podcast last week, so you can have a listen to that. And I removed it because I thought, I don't just want the whole debate about this to be about caps in clubhouse. Wrong. Graham, golf etiquette. Removing the cap in the clubhouse is not specifically golf etiquette. It's common etiquette, and has been for hundreds of years, that men, in capital letters, I'm not really sure why, remove their cap, hat, helmet, head covering when entering a building or moving indoors. So this is only the upholding of good etiquette and not related to golf. It's sad to see etiquette being ignored so often in the modern world. I'm not sure why, but it just looks wrong when men wear caps indoors. The main problem is younger men who do not seem to be aware of these unwritten rules.
Well, I will now make younger men, and everyone, in fact, aware of where the tradition of taking your hat off indoors comes from.
Is this the NCG Golf Podcast, so the rest is history?
Are you ready for this? Removing your headgear indoors, especially in a hall or castle, is a way to show you weren't hiding a weapon. You come in peace, or you're respecting the house of the Lord. I've also read that it's to do with hygiene, because when you're wearing a hat outside, when you're working outside, it would have collected dust and soil and things. So you want to bring that dust and soil inside. So I'm saying, and if you're in a golf club and you've got a hat on, if you've got a weapon underneath it, take it off. If God is in your golf club, take it off. If you're not coming in peace, take it off. However, if you don't have a weapon, you are coming in peace, and God isn't there, I think you can keep it on.
Is a pitch mark, does that count as a weapon? Suppose you could stab someone with it.
Pitch mark power.
Andy, since pre-Victorian times, it has been considered the height of bad manners to wear any form of headwear indoors. Also, for those golfers that do, just how sunny is it inside your clubhouse that deems you to need to wear a baseball cap? I mean...
Yeah, fair enough. Let's move on from hats. I think the third point you made there was about which we didn't cover last week actually, which is this kind of club etiquette, which I would sort of summarise as being when you join a club, you are expected to involve yourself in club life, and you need to be a giver as well as a taker. Would be one way of putting it.
The problem with social events is they uniformly represent the membership. So, you know, what some people think of as a good social event, I would not think of a good social event. I think some sort of ditzy dance after golf is not the kind of event that I want to turn up to.
What do you think of as a good social event?
But I don't know. I mean, that's universal to, not universal, but that's particular to me, isn't it?
I think you would quite like it if like Shed 7 came and played at Ramside Hall, or whatever it is you play.
Probably turn out for a race night.
A race night?
Yeah, probably, you know, with the little piggies.
Okay. What, one of those virtual racing
Yeah,
things?
they're like virtual racing nights. Quiz is always popular, isn't it?
Always appeals to the neurodiverse.
But I always feel like sometimes they play to this kind of social club audience where it's let's get in this singer that does the rounds.
Like the tweer, the better. Yeah, but
Shania Twain.
Let's not get too bogged down in the detail of what the social event is. I think the point is that, like, back in the day when you went for your golf club interview, that the honorary secretary or the captain or whoever's doing that interview would say to you, we organise friendly matches versus other clubs, and we've got these traditional fixtures, and the club has social events, and that all helps swell the coffers of the house till. And it was kind of expected, and you'd actually feel a little bit of kind of new member guilt, or you would try and get involved in club matches. I certainly did when I first joined Old Woodleys, found myself playing against Moortown away or whatever. I mean, these things aren't a hardship. It's like a game of golf somewhere lovely and a big meal afterwards.
It was a big thing as well, though. I mean, there was a sense of pride in like donning the jersey or whatever,
100%,
with a club icon on it and representing the club, and you'd work hard to try and win your match.
Yeah, but that is something that is shifted, I think, from club life for a lot for people our age and younger. It's a facility that you're using, isn't it? That is kind of, I think that is a mindset shift. That it's not something that you are playing an active role in. It's a facility that you're using. I can't think of any way of putting it better. And that is definitely it's a kind of different social exchange than it used to be. And I think that is where we get into this. We've discussed this before about the proprietary versus private sector. Whereas I think most members, even of a private club, they act like customers. They don't act like members. And that, I think, is definitely something that's shifted that particular reader has hit upon.
I do agree with him in the sense of the people who just join to play and leave straight afterwards. I mean, that's not a thing really where I play. Like, and that's one of the reasons actually I went back to Sandburn. It has a very, very decent after round clubhouse atmosphere. You know, can easily lose 90 minutes in there. You know, afterwards, you know, a bit of food and a beer and whatever. Some may have more than one beer and take alternative arrangements home. But that's one of the reasons I went back to that. Back there, it had that very big after golf vibe, which is important to me. You know, like for me, it's the whole experience of the thing. Golf is just a part of it. Like what happens afterwards is as important actually as the golf for me. But I understand for a lot of people, you know, just need to get away. Golf's a bit of exercise. It's something competitive for them to do, but you know, get in the car, gone. The car park golfer, that's what they call them, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So I think that's enough on that. Guess where I'm going next week, by the way?
I'm about to be jealous, aren't I?
You just reminded me, because like I was going to start deliberately getting the name of Close House wrong for a joke.
Is this one of those things where I have to like just repeat that I've been to Harrogate recently again? Or?
No. I'm going to your neck of the woods. That's why I mentioned it.
Oh, okay.
You're an expert on the northeast, aren't you?
Well, I'm from there.
Yeah, so I'm going to Mapfon Hall.
Ah, newly renovated Mapfon Hall.
That's right, yeah. And I'm also going to Ramside Hall. Ah,
with its new smashing clubhouse and indoor entertainment area.
I'm basically going on a tour of 4-star northeast golf resorts.
Very interested to see what's going to happen with Mapfon, because obviously being a member at Close House, Close House has kind of had this monopoly for a while, I think, in the kind of hospitality / exclusivity golf stakes. And I think from all the vibes that I'm hearing, Matt Hall are a very decent contender to them. And I'm really interested to see what happens at Ramside. I've done 2 or 3 sort of stay-in players at Ramside, and always wondered what they could do more with that facility. So, I mean, they've turned it into sort of a night spot, haven't they? Bowling inside and shuffleboard and stuff like that, and simulators. And
it's a pretty amazing thing. There's all of these facilities in the northeast, because there's also Rockcliffe Hall, isn't there? Anyway, so we'll see what that's like. Right. So we are going to get stuck into our membership survey. Are you ready for this?
Drum roll.
As I trailed earlier, we have run another survey of you, our dear listeners and dear readers of our website and followers of our social media accounts. And it's basically to try and get under the hood of what your intentions are in terms of golf club membership, how your membership fees have changed, what you value most from a membership. And this is kind of, I guess, against the landscape of, there's a lot of chat about golf club membership being under pressure. And obviously everybody's fees are going up. The cost of everything is rising. Clubs are facing kind of challenges on both sides in that their members are being squeezed by a cost of living crisis. And they're also facing rising fuel bills, rising wages, rising national insurance payments of their own. So the clubs have got increased costs. And then we've also, I think it's fair to say that we're kind of living through an era where people's expectations have kind of skyrocketed. So we all sort of sit on social media. We all develop FOMO about people having a better experience than us. We all kind of see what beautiful golf courses look like, and we expect ours to look the same, and we expect us to be having the best possible experiences at our clubs. So I think there's kind of big pressure on golf clubs. I think there is a developing narrative that the off-course boom that I think is undoubted, so packed driving ranges, general participation numbers being up, how that is actually translating into traditional golf environments and certainly into traditional golf consumption through membership. But that is set against some recent numbers that Scottish Golf have produced, which would indicate kind of real positivity and growth around their membership numbers. So we'll get into the detail of that, but we're going to try and kind of look at both sides of that story, see whether this kind of boom in overall participation, boom in interest in the game, which feels like it's never been higher, is actually translating to your experiences at club level and how that's influencing your decision to remain a member or move your membership or whatever else in between, and how that ties into what we're seeing in Scotland, which on the face of it looks pretty good. So I think, why don't we start with the good news, basically? So there is definitely this kind of national growth story, if you like, or international growth story. So I've obviously spent some time in America recently. And I think that is kind of, it is worth just kind of like having that as a headline for this, is that golf in many ways has never been in a better health. So we're seeing huge rises in simulated golf. We're seeing much more younger people playing. We're seeing huge rises in influencer numbers, and that is because they're popular. They wouldn't be doing it. They wouldn't be creating content if they weren't able to generate followers. And I think that is all feeding into engaging younger people with the game. You're then seeing big sort of rises in the numbers of facilities and the quality of experience at driving ranges going up. So you definitely have more people engaging with the game in some form. And we're also seeing, on the face of it, some really positive news out of Scotland, where they're saying that membership grew by 5.5% last year. So they've 220,000 playing members of Scottish golf clubs, which is the biggest increase since COVID, basically. Some of the highlights from that, I think, sort of tell a more interesting story. So adult male membership up about 3%, adult female membership up about 1.5%, junior boys membership up nearly 30%, which is like huge, isn't it? Absolutely huge. I've been looking at participation figures and membership figures for years, and it's really, really hard, I think, to grow those junior categories. And people make a big song and dance about really small increases. So to see junior membership across the board for boys and girls go up over 30%, I think is massive. Nearly over 28% of that is boys, 3% of it is girls. But that is kind of upwards of 8,000 golfers in total of at the youngest possible age category that's measured becoming golf club members for the first time. So I think that is a tremendously positive story, actually. And that growth in Scotland has become, despite all of the oft-discussed economic pressures that households are facing. So on the face of it, it looks like there really is kind of strong underlying demand for the game.
Yeah, that's why sometimes I look at some of the narrative that's pushed around membership and I sort of scratch my head a little bit with it. And we can talk about that a bit later, some of the reasons why. Certainly, I don't think, like, however you want to talk about cost of living, however you want to talk about pressures, golf is in the best place it's been since the early 90s. Yeah. Early to mid 90s, since that rapid expansion of farmland into golf courses, because there was this massive hidden demand. I can't remember what the R&A report was called, but there was an R&A report, wasn't there, that basically said, we need more golf courses. And lots of people built them, and obviously membership was really thriving. The things can't be separated. You know, if you've got, obviously we had a fantastic year weather-wise, which clearly is part of this, but you can't have record scores, you can't have record numbers of participation, you can't have every aspect of the game seeing massive growth, whether that be people playing golf on courses or simulator and driving range traffic. And we've talked on this podcast about experiences that you've had of, you know, having to queue up to an hour to get into a driving range because so many people wanted to do it. You can't say that and then say golf isn't in a good place. Now, I am surprised still that we are in this position in 2026. You can't put these Scottish member figures down to COVID. You can't. Like, COVID was a long time ago now. Not in the sphere of our lifetimes, but for a lot of people, it was a long time ago now. You know, nothing that happened in COVID is getting people to get out on a golf course now. So, what is it that's keeping people in the sport?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I want to dwell too much on the detail of the Scottish numbers, but we're seeing it in England as well, aren't we? We're seeing massive growth in iGolf, for example, that we've talked about. We're seeing every expectation that I have, Tom, is that England golf will show similar sorts of membership figures. I don't think anyone's expecting any sort of big decline for 2025. Yeah, 26.
Well, these figures relate to 25, though, don't they?
So I think, this email kind of dropped at an advantageous time to us,
right? Because we were doing the survey.
We were planning to do this survey, and then this email arrived from Scottish Golf explaining their figures. And I think that probably setting out on this, we were expecting this podcast to be a sort of doom and gloom podcast, right? We were going to say, right, everybody, you're all saying that golf's booming. Well, we've got some numbers that would indicate that it isn't. And we'll get into the results of the survey as we go along. But certainly in terms of this Scottish picture, if these numbers are to be taken at face value, and I can't see any reason why they wouldn't, this is kind of demonstrative of a game that's sort of in rude health, right? So this is not people kind of scratching at the surface of golf. This is people making a big year-long financial commitment to say, I am willing to shell out £1,000 to play this game sort of week in, week out. So this is an increase in the numbers of like very committed players. So I think that is one thing that is huge. I think the second thing is I can't stress enough how positive that junior figure is, because that is like, it's a huge percentage increase. It's a decent chunk of new players playing the game. And this is at a time when it's never been harder to mobilize kids. And I mean that in a sort of literal and figurative sense, like, because they just want to play devices. Yeah. Golf's really hard for them to get to. So if they're managing to grow junior membership, I think that is brilliant, and all credit to them. You wonder, like, how much of it's a local story in Scotland. Like, so we talk a lot on the Courses podcast, and it's like a kind of known fact that cost of green fees in Scotland at a lot of the trophy venues has gone through the roof. And you imagine that must have some unintended consequences. So first of all, it will cause green fee inflation at places that are not visited by Americans, because they are now more frequented by Scottish golfers. Does that in turn hand more value back to membership, because people think, well, actually, I can't afford to pay green fees 12 times a year. I might as well join somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, although I would say about Scotland, and particularly regional areas, there's a lot more emphasis on Scottish and regional rates at some of those trophy courses that are just not really seen at a lot of English courses, for example. Yeah. So although I'm not saying that they're cheap still by any stretch of the imagination, I don't think you have to go and pay the rack rate at Dumbarnie, for example, if you're a Scottish resident or Fife resident. There is a local rate. Obviously, the St Andrews courses aren't there. There's a local rate there, isn't there, for Fife residents? They have the option of the Links Trust card as well. So I think that kind of establishing an opportunity for Scottish players to go and play their best courses, that happens a lot more in Scotland than it does in England, for example.
Yeah, and then the second thing that I just wondered whether is golf club membership potentially a beneficiary of the cost of living crisis? I know that sounds a bit of a strange thing to say, but there is a thing that in recession that we all stop spending money on big ticket items, but we can't help ourselves but give ourselves little treats. So we get more takeaways, for example. We download more movies from Apple or Sky or whatever because we want to reward ourselves, but we don't feel that we can reward ourselves with a big holiday or a new car or whatever because we're in recession and there's a squeeze on our pocketbooks. And I wonder whether people are taking fewer holidays because the cost of flying to places, the cheap airline thing is kind of almost a thing of the past. Exchange rates aren't great. So whether people are actually thinking, I'm going to be at home more, I'm going to be away less, therefore I can extract more value from my golf club membership, whether actually the golf club membership starts to fall into that small reward category, because on a cost per round basis, it probably does.
I've got to be careful not to generalise. So feel free, listeners, to have a go at me if I've got this wrong. But my perception is that golf club membership in Scotland's a fair bit cheaper than England. Now there are reasons for that, economic reasons, as well as being able to, especially at some trophy venues, being able to rely on international visitors paying quite large green fees to subsidise membership prices. So, I think if we did a survey, for example, that regionalised the price of membership, we'd see some pretty stereotypical stuff. It's cheaper in the north of Scotland than it is in the south of England, for example. I do think that has its place. And I'm not suggesting it in any way that there aren't economic, social difficulties in various parts that means that cost of living hits there just as much as it hits in other parts of the country, regardless of golf club membership prices. But I think that is something that's worth noting anyway. What's the price that you're always quoted at North Berwick? Something like 600 quid or something for membership costs there. I mean, I've seen prices at places like Matrihanish. It's all right, Matrihanish is out of the way, but it's pretty good value.
Please don't mention North Berwick on this podcast or any other, because like alarms start going off. You'll have George Cram around your house before you can say West Links.
Why is it number 4?
Right, so I think that kind of hopefully sets the scene for what's happening in Scotland. So kind of concurrent with this, we've run our own membership survey, and I think this has given us some real insight actually into what a golf club member looks like. So we've had well in excess of 1,000 responses, closer to 1,500. And I think the first thing that sort of screams out is that people have been members, a lot of people have been members of clubs for a long time. So 60% of our respondents have been club members for over 20 years. So that we're basically talking about the majority of these people are lifers, right? So they played for most of their adult life, if indeed not since they were kids. 80% have played golf for more than 20 years. They've been in the game for forever, basically.
Although this represents both of us as well, doesn't it?
It does, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Over 90% are male. I'm over 90% male. Are you?
Last time I looked.
Just about. The testosterone levels are dropping fast.
Well, I'm told baldness is about too much testosterone, so
it's all right.
Make of that what you will.
Sounds like total bullshit. Sounds like sort of thing a bald person would say.
Well, quite.
The majority are age 55 plus. So I guess in many ways, there are no surprises there.
But do you know what this tells me? This tells me what every other survey tells me about golf club membership. This is the core. Every golf club membership survey you ever see says, what's the average age of membership? I think the average age of membership in England is 54 plus. So this is heartland stuff, isn't it? This is the exact identikit of a stereotypical club golfer in Great Britain and Ireland.
But it's still sort of weird to me, because we sit there on our phones all day, every day, right? And there are not many bits of social media content, apart from possibly ours, that are over 90% male, majority over 55 plus, who have played golf for over 20 years, who have been a member of a golf club for over 20 years. Like, if you're producing content, or if you're looking for that kind of profile in golf social media, it's few and far between. So the noise around golf is not happening here, is it? This is not what you're seeing. So what I think it highlights is that the people who are members of golf clubs are like enormously loyal, right? So once you're in, you're sort of in for life, right? That's kind of what it's saying. But where are the young people, right? So where's the succession plan? So when people are in the habit of being a member of a golf club, when you and I cease to be a member of a golf club, what happens next? Like, are people going to pick up the baton? Is it just something that you do late in age, or is the idea of joining a golf club something that's kind of dying out?
From a male perspective, so just talking from that perspective, I do feel that there will still be this infusion of early 40s, mid 40s, maybe a bit older now because we play other sports for a lot longer than perhaps we did 20 or 30 years ago. But golf traditionally has got its numbers from people who used to play football, people who used to play rugby, cricket, who wanted to keep competitive. They wanted a competitive sport. They've been competitive animals all their lives since they were kids playing their chosen sport. Obviously, they couldn't play it now for whatever reason, and now they want to do something else, and golf has allowed them to do that. And I still think that will be the case to a certain extent. Obviously, it's not unusual now. I mean, I'm nearly 50, you're nearly 50. It's not unusual now for us, for men of our age, to still play competitive football, whether it be veterans or things like that, which perhaps we didn't do sort of 20 or 30 years ago. But I still think that a lot of golf club members will come from that cash, that group. That said, what COVID definitely did was bring in a lot of younger mid 20s to mid 30s players that hadn't played any other sport before, or had just got sick of their sport and wanted to do something else.
Yeah, but those people aren't answering our survey.
No.
Or they're not reading our content.
No.
Or they don't exist.
I know what this says for the long-term future of sports publications.
No, but we're sort of joking, but the survey respondents are in line with what we know to be the demographic of a golf club member.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you're absolutely right in what you're saying, that COVID did bring back these sort of slightly younger male golfers to the game, but they're not members of golf clubs, objectively. So I think there is this sort of challenge about the kind of succession planning of the membership model and what clubs do to kind of future-proof that. And that sort of ties in neatly into this sort of boom in junior participation, which you're seeing in Scotland. So
they're real outlying figures, them, aren't they? I mean, I'd be very interested to see what other GB&I countries are doing, but that is a smashing increase.
So the national junior framework, I think, kind of helps with all of that. So it gives junior golfers in Scotland access to way more than one golf club, and it kind of supports the onboarding process of kids into the game. And that's where you've seen this like nearly 7,000 golfers, so a 55% increase in that network over the course of the year. Here, then I'm kind of in this world at the moment of trying to find ways, access points for my kids to get into golf. So first of all, there are amazing facilities like White Ridge, which are becoming increasingly prevalent. Like, they used to be massive outliers, but like local schemes like they have at White, where they organise competitive golf every Sunday for kids on their 12-hole golf course of all ages, all abilities. The course that Tadcaster offers is free junior membership. And this type of information is starting to penetrate with parents. So I quite often hear non-golfing families saying, I'm thinking of taking my kid to Tad because I know they're offering free access for kids. That sort of thing absolutely matters. So local initiatives, I think, are playing a huge part in it. You've then got kind of national programs, which I'm trying to sort of engage my kids with at the moment. So Golf Sixes, which is like competitive inter-club stuff. There's also things like Ping Junior Series. There's a Junior Faldo Series. So once you're kind of on a pathway, I think there are more and more places for you to kind of take your competitive golf. And that sort of matters as well, because that is what the kid is experiencing in football. So they kind of start off doing keepy-ups in the back garden, playing with their mates in the yard, then they join a local club. But they want to be playing fixtures against other people. You need somewhere to test your abilities. And I think that golf is doing that pretty well, as in like there are more and more opportunities for kids to do that. And like I said this on the podcast with Jack the other day. Anecdotally, I just think that driving ranges are packed with young people.
Yeah, you've said it in hours, yeah.
So I think there are tons of reasons for this. Like the pipeline, basically, I don't think has ever been stronger. And we have to call out influencers and social media for this, because things like Four Brothers, things like people like Rick Shields, kids like this stuff, right? They're on a platform that kids understand, in YouTube in the main. So it's kind of there alongside their own content that they're enjoying. And the golf content is just part of the YouTube mix in the child's eyes. So they're aware of it. They're kind of cogent of golf existing much, much earlier than they used to be. And I think that we were in a real dark period for golf and golf's general awareness, almost in the run up to COVID, before the grip of social media had really taken place. And we were having conversations like, well, there's no golf on BBC, so how is a kid in a non-golfing household even supposed to know it exists? And that's sort of totally flipped on its head, hasn't it?
Yeah,
because you've almost never had more free to access golf. It's just coming through influencers. And let's be straight about it, professional golfers becoming influencers. So Bryson DeChambeau's got a huge role to play in this. So I think that the top of the funnel stuff of social media has never been stronger for kids golf. I think as you get further down that sales funnel, the experience at driving ranges is amazing. Sim golf's got a huge golf to play. I think that pay and play facilities are kind of tapping into this and kind of understand the benefits of the footfall through their facilities of getting kids there. So it's kind of as you get to the bottom of the funnel where I think the challenges start to come in. And how do you then, in the current club structure and the current kind of pathway out of junior golf and into adulthood, how do you get what is undeniably more juniors staying as club members as you move through?
Have someone who's not a fossil be your junior organiser. That'd be a good start. I mean, I jest, obviously. I do think, to give clubs some props, I think they're working hard on junior structures in the main, and I think things are getting better in that regard. I've seen a number of clubs who, if we go back not too long ago, juniors were often told they couldn't play in club competitions for various reasons, usually because people don't like their £20 pot being taken by someone else, largely. But I think that is changing now. I've personally seen a number of clubs that have embraced juniors into adult competitions. Obviously, that comes with its own challenges, but putting everyone part of the same ethos of the club is really, really good. I just think in terms of current club structures, it's hard, isn't it, when you've got 60 years, 70 years sometimes of difference in age between two people. You've got a junior who might be 11 or 12. You've got someone at the club who's in their 80s who've been there for like 60 years. It's hard for those two to find common ground, isn't it? And clubs often try and steer a middling path between lots of different generations, which I don't think work. And you see that most strongly, I don't want to bring it back to it, in things like dress codes, where there are just completely different ideas of what's acceptable and what's not. And this is why golf has this conflict all the time.
Yeah. I think that is a massive part of it, actually. So once you kind of our age, you sort of just accept the rules and regulations, don't you? Because you've sort of grown up with it, and like you might think it's stupid, but you just get on with it for a quiet life, basically. I think if you're a kind of 20-something nowadays, that's not how you think, because you haven't grown up with it, so you're so far removed from it, you just completely begrudge it, and it's off-putting for you.
And you talked about those influencers. So those influencers are showing a very different side of golf as well. They're not necessarily showing that traditional structure, and when they are, they're taking the piss out of it. But I mean, I would agree entirely with what you were saying about how influencers in particular have changed the game. You look at, I'm going to big them up, you look at Four Brothers, for example. I mean, their stuff is funny. It's like genuinely funny.
Is it?
I like it. Right. I like it. All right, I find it funny. You don't.
So I think they'll probably materially change their ways if they think you find it funny.
What, am I stuck in the mud now? I'm an enlightened and progressive, nearly 50-year-old. But they have absolutely changed the idea of what golf is. And so if you go into a club, for example, you're not seeing that idea of that's being portrayed all the time on social media, and not just by people like Four Brothers, but by people like Bryson as well, showing a very different side, then obviously that'll jar, won't it?
Yeah, there's the perception versus the reality, definitely. Yeah. There's also just the kind of cold hard cash, isn't there? So these days you can play for free until you're kind of 16 at quite a number of places, and certainly for like heavily discounted rates. You then kind of into the working world at 18 or 22, whenever you get a job, and all of a sudden you're faced with full fees quite often.
Are you though now? I mean, I think that a lot of golf clubs graduate their fees. Some of them graduate it right up to 40. Which is like,
they'd want to, though, wouldn't they?
I mean, we missed out on all of this, unfortunately. But I sometimes laugh when I see all the like categories that's file down a golf club website page of the different categories. And all right, if you're 35, the discount isn't as great as it is when you're 18 or 16 or 14 and so on. But I do think it's much easier from a cost point of view, at least, to be a golf club member than it probably has been for a while. That's not discounting cost of living and other economic pressures. But, certainly like when I was 24, came to York for the first time, the only option available to me was full fees.
Yeah.
That's not the case now.
It kind of feels memeable though, doesn't it? In that we've got this kind of like shiny, come on in, juniors, it's free golf lessons, free access to golf, wear what you want. And then literally they turn 18 and it's like, here's a bill for $2,000 and also can you put a suit on?
Yeah, I suppose there is some of that.
Well, there isn't, but that is kind of what I think golf clubs have to avoid, isn't it?
Well, there's a perception of that.
They need to soften the landing as much as possible. I do just need to do something personal at this point. So I often on this podcast talk about fondly about my salad days at Louth Golf Club in Lincolnshire. The guy who was our junior organiser passed away last year, Trevor Moody, God rest his soul. And last week, the person who I would say probably was like the person who inspired me most when I was a kid, sadly passed away. It's a guy called Pete Whitworth, and he was responsible for a lot of my soft landing into golf. So he was an absolute scruff bag, but he absolutely loved his golf and knew his golf like really, really well. Was a huge sort of club man and kind of was there kind of almost every day, like played loads of B team golf. He was the secretary of loads of things and had been the captain and all the rest of it. And I can still remember kind of like playing B team matches with him. And he was kind of my elder statesman and I was his kind of protege. And I can still remember things that he told me, like when the greens are wet, the putt doesn't break as much and all this kind of stuff that you don't know where you got it from. And I was kind of reflecting on him when I heard that he passed away last week. And I think those kind of figures are still so central to golf club success for this kind of thing, aren't they? You need benevolent people who are going to bring kids along with them. Yeah,
and sometimes we, mock's not the right word, but sometimes we do criticise volunteers for various attitudes, but it remains the case, particularly at junior level, that without them there's no golf.
Yeah. So I'll come to your funeral, Pete, and I will definitely go for a Guinness Zero in your honour. Right, we need to talk about women. So I think this is, we kind of have to talk about this, and I think this is a bit of an elephant in the room, to be honest with you. So you can talk about the junior stuff, I think, in quite an impassioned, genuine, celebratory mood, because like I said earlier, I've been looking at junior participation figures and like scoffing for years and years when they've moved like 1%, and looking at those Scottish figures and kind of the eye test of what you're seeing at golf facilities and the amount of kids there are there. There's undeniable growth in that category. Scottish Golf have got this kind of grand plan to grow female membership by over 50% over the next decade. And these are the kinds of initiatives that kind of governing bodies and the game has been talking about for years and years and years. England Golf have had a scheme called Girls Golf Rocks for some time. And there are these sort of pockets of either individuals or union-based activities which are totally focused on trying to increase female participation. There obviously is some progress being made. So we're seeing a 14% increase in female rounds played, and the governing body in Scotland have got a dedicated women and girls coordinator, which they're funding at every club at club level. But the kind of data, both in terms of the Scottish golf numbers and our own survey, and just what we know in terms of what will come from the England golf data, is that female representation remains really, really low. So we talked about a gap between kind of perception and reality for junior golfers and for younger golfers. There is definitely a gap between the strategic intent of the game to bring more women in and what is actually happening. And I still think like there's miles to go, and it's still this sort of untapped potential for the game as a whole is to increase female participation. Where are they all?
Until golf as a sport accepts equality of tee time access, they're just messing around the edges of this.
Do you think that's the nub of it?
Well, it's certainly what I think is really important. There are still clubs out there that where you can't play on certain days depending on your gender. So I don't know how that's allowed in a modern society.
Are we going to get into this now in depth or not?
Well, I mean, I've written about it a number of occasions. I just think that you need equality of tee time access. But why does it matter? Why does it matter whether you're a man or a woman, whether you can play on a Tuesday or whether you can play on a Saturday or whether you can play on a Sunday? What does it matter? People say traditions and histories and competitions. Bollocks to it.
Well, so I'm not going to play devil's advocate, but I'm just going to try and explain it to you because I think you know the answer to that. So if golf didn't exist and it was invented tomorrow and we built a golf course across the road, we wouldn't build it across the road, would we? We'd find a nice sandy bit of soil further down the road and we built an amazing golf course and we decided on what our membership policy is. In today's society, where women just work just as much as men, we would just say the membership fees are this, and we wouldn't have the concept of male and female memberships and differing playing rights. But the working practices rather than traditions, and I think that is an important distinction in golf clubs, is from a different era where the man works and the woman doesn't, right? So that is why Ladies' Day is Tuesday. That is why women of a certain age are perfectly happy to play on a Tuesday and pay lower fees because of it. And that is why we are where we are. So there is a huge kind of cultural shift that needs to take place at traditional golf clubs, at all sorts of golf clubs actually, in order to achieve what you're saying. Because at the moment, the most resistant group to what you're saying would be the existing female members because they'd have to pay more fees.
I just think at some point, legislation is going to sort this out. And it's basically going to say, you can't do this.
But the legislation currently, as in the Literal Equality Act, says you can do this based on working practices. Yeah. So why do you think legislation
I just think it will change because I think society changes. And I think what people think is acceptable will drive the change. Lots of golf clubs are making... I play at 2 golf clubs that are entirely mixed. Everything's mixed. Close House and Sandburn Hall. We have
those weird mixed toilets, do you? You always have men and women in the same toilet.
No.
No one really likes those.
But there is no... I mean, there are a separate... I think there's a separate men's and women's club championship at both, and that's it.
Jesus, it really is mixed.
And that's because that was asked for. Every other competition I play in is mixed. Every competition.
So Sandburn Hall?
Sandburn and Close House.
Why did we write about this more?
So when I go to places where that's not the case, I just sort of scratch my head. Just go, because this is what I'm used to.
Bald head.
Scratch what's left of my hair. So I accept that I am talking about this from a biased viewpoint because that's what I experience. But
how have you managed to find these left-leaning golf clubs that are so progressive? Is that one of the reasons you've joined them?
No, I don't think so. Not in the first sense, but it's the 21st century. It's 2026, people.
Well, yes, it is. But what you're experiencing, I don't think is the experience out in many other places.
But I think it's the growing experience in more places as people begin to cotton onto it.
You've got this fundamental escape route for a lot of clubs of the Equalities Act, which has said that you have to have equal fees and equal playing rights unless there is a kind of commercial reason for you not to do that. And loads of clubs would be able to say, well, there is a commercial reason because all my women would leave if I tried to charge them the same amount. The second thing is that I would say is that to a certain extent, governing bodies have not put their money where their mouth is from an equality point of view when it's come to the handicap system and to the business of course rating. So we've just been through this seismic oft-discussed change to WHS, which was an opportunity to completely level the playing field in terms of handicaps. But we still have this concept of men's and women's indexes being different and calculated differently, which feels like a ball drop to me. And bigger than that is that there was an opportunity to rate every set of tees for both genders from the get-go, and they chose not to do it. And the argument they made was it was more important, basically, from a resource and time point of view, to do all the tees for men because there's more men playing. So it's the kind of very definition of a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So I think this is why I say this is the elephant in the room, is that the data is telling us that the female participation numbers, both in terms of membership and rounds played and everything else, are not moving as fast as men's numbers are in the same direction. And I think a lot of noise is being made about efforts to be made to grow female participation. Perhaps the on-the-ground reality is slightly different.
Let me look into the future, right? In certain areas of the golf club industry, there's a particular demographic, right? That demographic, with the best will in the world...
Well, you always raise your eyebrows when you say something you know is going to be polemic.
...is counting its days are numbered.
Oh, here we go again.
So I would say, where is the next generation of people coming from in golf club membership? Now, we've talked about men. Where is the next generation of women coming from in golf club membership? Can you think of any women of... can you think of people who are prepared to put up with some of the things that they're asked to put up with at golf
probably
clubs?
Not.
No.
Yeah.
You have to be you have to be really keen.
Yeah, and you have to have grown up with it, more likely. So you've just sort of become thick-skinned to it.
Yeah.
Should we move on? So we asked people about money, which I think, and you talk around the edges of lots of things that often people's decisions, people's happiness will come down to how much stuff have cost and their perception of value. And I think that the two things are distinct, aren't they? So there's the headline amount for a membership cost, but there's also the perceived value of that membership from the individual in question. So 85% of you are telling us that your fees increased during 2025. So that's basically everybody, isn't it, I think? Most of you are expecting increases over the next 12 months of somewhere between 5 and 9%. So I think inflation is somewhere around about 4.5%.
3.4 now, okay. CPI, I think.
So we're talking about increases to fees, which are sort of twice or three times the level of inflation. And again, most of you are expecting further increases this year of that kind of level, so nearly 80% of you. So the cost of membership is going up. And so an increase of 5% on a membership of £1,000 is 50 quid. On a membership of £2,000 is 100 quid. I think that the amount it's in itself feels small, but this has been happening for a long time. Like the membership of my golf club has more than doubled in the 13 years that I've been there, which you might say is in line with inflation. It probably is, but at the end of the day, it is twice the amount of pound notes that it was when I first joined.
Yeah, and it only matters if your wages are rising at the same amount.
Yeah, exactly.
If they're not, then...
Yeah, so I think that you've got this... you've got a huge amount of strategic thinking and investment from clubs and governing bodies, which is designed to drive participation, right? So we've got things like iGolf, things like access to scoring apps, campaigns to get more women into it, free membership for juniors. All of this is designed to ramp up the numbers of people playing the game. But are members still going to see the value in the kind of upfront cost of a membership? That's the big thing, isn't it?
I still think that if you're playing at the level of some of our survey respondents are, if you're playing the numbers that they are, then golf club membership still is incredibly good value. Mm-hmm. Really, really good value compared to, say other pursuits. If you're paying £1,500 for a golf club membership and you're playing 150 times a year, that's pretty good value, better value than a Premier League season ticket, all that sort of stuff. Really good stuff. I think
it's also ticking more boxes for you, isn't it? And I think the Premier League season ticket is an example that we often use and others often use it, but it's also only part of the cost, right? Because you got to get there, you got to party car, you got to buy your burger, you probably got to buy a shirt for your kid, etc., etc. So the day out of the football is costing money above and beyond the season ticket, whereas you can legitimately go to your golf club and spend time there and spend no money,
as people said earlier on in the comments.
Yeah, so it is an incredibly good value thing, because you are basically buying access to a facility that you can use as much as you can do.
Yeah, and I think where it gets into trouble is when you're not using it as much. If I was playing golf at the level that some of the people I know play golf, you'd never hear a peep out of me about the cost of it, because obviously I'd be getting huge value. But, I talk often about, obviously, these memberships I have. One of them's quite expensive. I'm not there a lot, so I'm continually reviewing the value of that. Is it worth me carrying on spending that kind of money? And principally, that's because I'm not using it very much. If I was there every week, I wouldn't say a word about it.
I think that's exactly right. So what we are seeing, this kind of loyal membership, like we said earlier, that the respondents to our survey have been members of a golf. 80% have been members of a golf club for 20 years. So people are loyal, right? And they've demonstrated that loyal over a long period of time. But we're also seeing we're definitely not seeing blind loyalty. We are seeing some resistance to the rising costs and this kind of perception of value that I keep going on about. So 77% of you say you're very likely to renew, which leaves 23% who are kind of in the undecided column. And 15% of you are saying you're likely to leave your current club.
You see, I think that is quite an alarming figure. When you talk about this backdrop of great stuff that's been going on, membership that's continuing to rise, I think 15% saying they have considered leaving their golf club is an alarming figure. And it's an alarming figure because these people who've responded to this survey are absolute core.
Yeah.
They've been members of golf clubs, as I say, for over 20 years on the whole. These are the people who are the absolute reliance. The something will have to happen. They'll carry me out of here in a box sort of member. So when 15% of them say, yeah, we might. Then that would be a wake-up call for me when your absolute core is saying, well, come on.
So, that is a good piece of statistical analysis by you, because it's not 15% of fly-by-night Johnny-come-latelys. It's 15% of people who've said they've been a member of a golf club for more than 20 years. So, and in actual sort of numbers, that's also a big number of people. So if most golf clubs have got a membership of 1,000, that's 150 people. That's a lot of churn, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the usual retention rate is around sort of 6 to 9% normally. So an average golf club would expect to lose people every year for various reasons. Some people just get sick of it. Some people die. Some people move. So, the figure never stays the same. There's always a little bit of churn. And that's why you want waiting lists, isn't it, to sort of fill that back up. But
people who are considering leaving doesn't necessarily mean they will leave. But the kind of reasons that you gave for potentially leaving, fee increases was the biggest one. So that kind of tells its own story. I think there's a couple of things in there which kind of are speaking to this kind of higher expectation point that we've made, like course condition. It's amazing how often that comes up in any survey of golfer satisfaction.
And those two things are linked, though. Course condition and further fee increases, I think. Certainly in the future, the big thing that's already happening now, but it's definitely going to happen over the next 10 years in golf clubs, is irrigation and drainage, and in particular, irrigation systems that need replacing. There's a lot, if you think about these early 90s golf clubs that I talked about earlier on, all of these golf clubs now have irrigation systems in there that are 35 years old, coming up 40 years old. They have a shelf life, right? And if you've priced up irrigation systems, they're 7 figures now.
Oh, yeah.
In some cases. And golf clubs have got to pay for these sort of things. And what the golf clubs not necessarily like doing, thinking ahead about stuff that they're going to have to pay for. So how do you fund an irrigation system that's going to cost you 6-7 figures? Do you take out a big loan and pay it back over the next sort of 10 or 15 years? Or do you say to your members, it's your golf club, you want a great conditioned golf club, this is what you're going to have to do to have it. We need to buy this fancy irrigation system so we can better have water resources, we can be more sustainable, and by the way, you're going to have to pay for that, your club.
So I think this is really interesting in terms of like this whole conversation, is that this is kind of the credit collision that we're sort of on. So we talked earlier about the massive explosion in the number of influencers selling the benefits of golf to younger people, and that's amazing, right? And that is like the whole thing kind of like being beneficial. The other end of that is that we all spend loads of time on our phone like looking at pictures of Western Gales and looking at pictures of people playing golf at Seminole and irritating things like that. And we're looking at people having great experiences on the best possible places to play golf. And then we go back to our muddy parkland, which is closed for 3/4 of the year. And the reality of the golf experience versus what we're seeing and what our expectation is being programmed to expect is very different. Like we've talked for years about kind of Augusta syndrome and the effect that has on member dissatisfaction in the months immediately after that in April. I think there's an element of that sort of writ large these days, in that you kind of see this, like, the great golf courses the world has to offer on your phone all of the time. And you think, well, why now a place like that? Why isn't that place like that? And further still, people play more away golf now than they used to. People go and get their 200 quid out and go and play Birkdale or whatever else. And then they come back saying, why haven't we got square tees? Why haven't we got mown runoffs between our tees and our greens? So the kind of this sort of free access to really high value places is also hiring people's expectations at more workaday clubs. And I think that is a challenge. So you've kind of got this kind of expectation that's through the roof from your membership, and it's costing you more and more and more money to meet that expectation. And that's tricky.
Yeah, definitely. And there's also climate change. I'm not suggesting that golf club members are in any way climate change deniers, but I personally think golf is only just starting to get to grips with what's coming in terms of resources and the use of pesticides and fertilizers and disease suppressant techniques, and all of these things have a massive impact on course condition.
Yeah. So if we then sort of close off with what does it mean? What does all this mean for golf clubs? Like, what do they need to do? What's your manifesto?
Well,
if you're the CEO of Golf Club England, if even that existed, what would you be doing?
Well, I think we're in a good place still currently. I think all the figures still suggest that.
So you're complacency. Well,
no, hang on. Let me get to the end. I mean, I think there are pressures. I think that, where you are hearing some narrative in the industry, I think it's around some parts of the proprietary network, for example, where there's opportunity and pressure to sell for housing. Like, housing is a real issue in this country, and golf clubs are increasingly being perceived as stopping house building, essentially. This land could be better used to home people. It's a difficult argument. Now, as a members club, not talking around things like leases, that's one thing. When you're a proprietary club and pressure is building to release things for housing, and there's a lot of money that can be pushed at you in order to release land for housing, then that's where I think we'll see some pressure on golf clubs in the future, because proprietary golf clubs are run for profit.
Yeah.
They are businesses. Members like to think they're members. They're not. You said earlier, they are customers. They need to think of themselves as customers. It's up to the proprietor to do what they want with their business. And we are seeing bits of this, aren't we? We're seeing clubs that are selling off land, shortening their courses because of the housing need, and obviously it's profitable for them to do that. So I do think there's going to be some big changes in that market. In terms of the overall golf club perspective, as I said at the start, we're in a decent space at the moment. Participation's really high. Membership seems to still be really good. Scottish figures that you've explained earlier on, England figures look like they're going to be pretty similar, but there isn't a lot of room for complacency. The people who have filled in our survey, if they don't mind me saying so, are older. As you said earlier on, where are the younger people coming from outside of those that joined at COVID? How are we getting juniors into the game? There's some great work going on in Scotland, so maybe we should look a bit deeper into that to see what has been happening there. But when your core group says 15% of them say, well, we've considered leaving because of things like high cost, course condition, the perceived better value elsewhere, then that is something to think on. It's not a situation where we can rest on our laurels. Golf has to continue to be competitively priced as much as possible within an industry which costs a fortune in order to do, but it has to try and be competitively priced within this wider expectation of services going up and prices going up. You've got to make sure as much as possible, when your customer perceives that course condition is massively important, for you to present the thing that you can the best possible way that you can.
Yeah.
So I'm hopeful, but there's things to think about, aren't there?
Yeah. I think so. For me, like, you're never going to lose an argument. So I have an argument with me about investing in the quality of the golf course. That's got to be the number one priority. I think the most interesting perspective I can offer is the type of conversations we were having going into COVID, when the game was in decline, membership was going backwards, and it was all sort of doom and gloom around the whole industry. Golf clubs were closing, right? So in many ways, that narrative has now completely shifted. We've now got this huge surge in participation, rounds played are up, driving range of the pack, blah, 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 blah. So there's undeniable growth. The weird thing about it is, I don't think it guarantees success for traditional golf brands, right? And when I say traditional golf brands, I kind of mean top to bottom. And it certainly doesn't guarantee security for golf clubs, because whilst you've got this demand, you've got to still be offering the people who have got the demand decent value. You've got to still be selling your product. And you've got to understand, I think, what it is that all of these new people want to be buying. So there's still an evolution that's required, isn't there, in terms of the product of the traditional golf club membership. So be that about quality, of course, be that about environment that's at the club, be that how you're sort of communicating the value that your golf club offers to people. We're still on a journey, I think, that in order to kind of move these people from driving ranges, from Sims, off Instagram, into the big leap that golf club membership is, golf clubs still need to carry on this journey of evolution to retain people better.
Yes, I would agree.
Jesus wept, Steve. That was long, wasn't it? It's a lot of talking about things to do with golf. Please do tell us what you thought about the results of those survey. Is it in line with your own experiences? Please do leave some comments on our website. Please do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. Please don't rattle us about North Berwick anymore. That ship has sailed. Thank you, Steve.
See you next week.